help you, sir?
No.
Well, what is it exactly that you want? Hey! You can't enter here. Wait a second. Hey, just a minute.
That's the guy.
Hey, this is a restricted area.
Welcome to another episode of It's Action Time. I'm Matt.
And I'm
Jason, and this is Paul. Paul is our trusty iPhone 4 who's going to tell us all about the metrics of an action movie. Paul, take it away.
Take it away, Paul.
Alright, I mean, it's very simple, very objective way of assessing the quality of an action movie. You have deaths per minute, you have total deaths, and these cannot be implied deaths. The deaths have to be valid, very clearly shown on screen. So for example, Terminator 2, when you see, a shot from orbit of a nuclear bomb going off, and millions of people are dying, that does not count. So you have total deaths, you have maximum time between deaths, because you don't want to sit there, you don't want all of the action just concentrated at the end necessarily. You don't want to sit there and wait for, half an hour of dialogue. And then the fourth metric would be, there's a little subjectivity in that, and that would be special kill or injuries inflicted. That would include total body obliterations, knee breakings, throat rippings, head crushings, things like that.
Good old throat crushing, never heard it.
We mentioned the Commodore 64, so all you people out there loved it, but now we're going to get into where gaming just took off.
Yeah.
And that's when we get into the NES.
NES.
Groundbreaking. And groundbreaking, and when you got the game, most of the time, when it first came out, you got Super Mario Brothers with it.
And
that was it.
That's all you needed.
No, that was later on. Duck
Right
Hunt
out of the
was
box,
later.
it was fun.
That didn't happen for like 2 years. Duck Hunt. Then
That's the system I got with Duck Hunt.
Yeah, but like the very first one, all it came was with it either came with Gyromite or it came with an actual robot.
Oh yeah,
you guys ever? Do you remember the Gyromite robot pack you could get, or the one with Mario Brothers? And the robot was awesome because again, the rich friend lived next door. He's like, watch this, man. I played Gyromite before. He's like, robot does it all. It opens all the doors and slides everything. I'm like, what? This robot is doing this for us.
And there was just that one game that the robot
yeah, and it's just
with,
a game, and that's all it did. And then you had Mario Brothers, which is the one that I had, which Super Mario Brothers 1 was
that was hard to beat.
It was hard to...
That
it was,
game, just the whole series of the Mario games. They definitely impacted the video game world forever.
Yeah. Oh, forever. And then going along the Mario Brothers. I think the most underrated Mario Brothers game is Super Mario Brothers 2, because from Mario Brothers 1 to Mario Brothers 2, completely different, and you did completely different. It was the first kind of game like that where it was like totally the way it looked, the way the game played. I mean, you had gambling in it, for crying out loud, where you could... and if you guys knew the trick where you could hit the button 3 times really fast, you could get all 3 cherries across and get all your...
Yep.
How many of you ever guys that was? I don't know if it was like 10 or whatever like that. But Mario Brothers 2, for me, like changed everything, because the first games on the NES were kind of basically along the lines pretty much the same, because they were just developing everything. You had Zelda, which was freaking...
That was groundbreaking.
Amazing. It was groundbreaking. And if your mom turned off your machine when you were far ahead of it, because it didn't save anything, how many people freaked out when that happened? My mom turned that off on me, and I was like about to beat it, because everybody stayed up till about 2-3 in the morning playing Zelda. all night long.
And that was a thing when games started coming out, and they had like you could tell the cartridge had like this weird little thing on it that it was a different color plastic, and it was a battery, so that when you could actually, it was the first games you could save your progress, and that was huge. People take it for granted nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely.
We actually get annoyed, like, oh, can't turn off. It's just don't turn off your console. Save
It's taking too long.
Oh
Yeah.
I was about to pull the plug on it right now mid game, but thanks for warning me. But that was a big deal because not all games had that, and if you turn it off, you're starting over at the beginning, and that's how it was. So that was a big deal. You'd rent a game, and it had the little save game thing on it, and then you were able to pick up where someone else that had rented the game had left off.
Yeah.
So even if you couldn't get to that level, in the 2 days you were renting it, you could check out, at least see what those levels looked like.
Oh, absolutely.
And that was a thing too, renting the Nintendo games.
That was the first. That's when that started too. I mean, it's just like when the VHSs came out and they started that. The video game, I think, what they just piggybacked right off of it and were like, "Hey, we can go with this and do this." And everybody rented games because their parents wouldn't spend this, and I don't blame them.
Oh, sure.
$60 back then was like $100 now. You know what I mean? Going for a game, so you could do that. But I mean, the games you could buy, like. I don't know about you guys, but Contra was one of my favorite.
Classic.
Contra was one classic game. I mean, side scroller.
I still remember the day that I saw Contra. There were very few games that impacted me like that game did. And Contra Code.
Oh yeah, up, down, left, right, B, A, select, start.
Oh yeah. And Contra Life Force and there's one other one that was similar to Life Force.
See, and that's and that was like the birth of series of games. You had Castlevania, which the first Castlevania still one of my favorite games. And
Double Dragon.
Double Dragon, Double Dragon 1, Double Dragon 2,
Ninja Turtles.
I mean, the games that they came out with, and then Battletoads.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, even the sports games hooked a lot of people on it too. I remember Pro Wrestling was one of my favorite games. I remember getting that, and I just played that nonstop. It only had 6 wrestlers you could pick from. The Panther and the Starman, always my favorite. I mean, just so
they weren't even.
Yeah,
they weren't even WWF ones.
No, they were nothing. They just made generic, these guys up. But yeah, it was so fun. Then he had Mike Tyson's Punch Out, which
that was one of the first sports licensed games, wasn't it? Where it was using real people. And, like the wrestling games were just these generic things. So when Mike Tyson's Punch Out came out, that was a big deal because it's actually him
Mike
in
Tyson.
There. It's a cartoon character, but
I know.
Still.
And then you had. Then you had sports and fighting with Blades of Steel.
Blades of Steel.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Blades of Steel was awesome.
Oh yeah.
What a fun game. Going back to Mike Tyson. It is a fun fact for everybody out there is I could pick up that game right now without using a cheat code, and I could go from Glass Joe all the way through Mike Tyson, and I could do it in one try. I've been challenged many times by friends.
I seen it.
Matt, I had a friend, and I have Paul, our good buddy iPhone 4, Paul. He challenged me one night. He's like, "You can't do it," and you know what? I said, "Let's go right now." Yeah. We walked in the living room. It was on, and I beat it. After I beat Mike Tyson, I just stared at him, walked away.
Because of that game, you learned how to box. You just like
it was just
you gotta punch up,
punching straight up.
It was just so. I mean, games like that when you're like, we were all about. Like, I mean, we were all about 10, 11 years old. We were just having a great time playing games like that. They were so fun. There were so many games. I mean, now they have the Nintendo Classic that just came out, and there's a mod for it where you can get 600 games, all the games that they've ever made for it. I have a couple friends who've done that already and put them on there, and they've sent me videos and picture text of the game. Absolutely incredible, just like it. I am going to do the same I'm gonna do the same thing, putting a mod on there, and it's just gonna bring it back. But I mean, it changed literally everything. Just the NES coming out, and then the quality of the games, and how far actually it went before the second system, Super Nintendo, came out. Because did Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis came out at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were like, or a year
out.
Genesis came out later.
Yeah, because that was 16-bit.
I think it was later. Or
we
earlier?
went.
I thought
it came out later.
They might have been like 6 months apart from each other, but that went from 8-bit to 16-bit because I never got the Super Nintendo. My friend across the street had it, and I was like, I'll get the Sega, you get the Super Nintendo. And both of them, I loved both of them. I can't say I liked one more than the other because different games. They both had different games, and they were. I mean, you had Shinobi on Sega Genesis, Altered Beast on Sega Genesis, Golden Axe, Sega Genesis. I mean,
even Sonic, the launch title was a solid game. Sega made great games. They still do. You know, they knew what they were doing with the software side of things.
Yeah, that was their best thing they've ever done. Was the Sega Genesis. They should have capitalized on it, and they didn't. I don't think they did it with the next system that they went over. I'll talk about my other favorite Sega thing a little later on in
and then every time you turn the Sega on, it would go
Sega.
And that was worth showing off.
That was worth it.
You know, the Nintendo didn't sing to you.
No. Well, and those
Nintendo.
and those systems were the first ones where you added buttons. Then you added it had extra buttons. Like the Super Nintendo, I believe, it had 4
instead of the 2. Yeah.
Instead of the 2, it had 4.
It had AB and an XY.
Yep. It didn't have the flippers yet on it, right?
No,
I don't believe
that.
I don't believe.
I don't believe. Super Nintendo. Did Super Nintendo have the 2 on the top? I can't remember.
I never had Super Nintendo.
Because I had the Genesis and I played Super Nintendo, but I didn't have it, so like I don't really remember a lot about it. That's still a lot of people's favorite system is the Super Nintendo. The games on Super Nintendo were more like your fun games, like party games, kind of like. I mean, starting off with those, they had some party games. That's why I went towards the Genesis, because the fighting games and all that. Street Fighter was awesome on Sega. It was really, really, to me, it was better on the Genesis, where just playing it was a lot. The fighting games and the sports games, which I was into sports games a lot. The graphics were better, and they got more into it. And like Matt said, with licensing, Sega had a ton of games where it had the license. I know Nintendo had Tecmo Bowl and Super Tecmo Bowl, where they're on the football side, but Sega had everything else that I liked. So that's why I particularly went with it. But both systems were awesome. People
seem to be aligned with one or the other. You know, like if you had a Nintendo, you would make fun of your friend's Sega Genesis and vice versa. You know, your system
just like
sucks,
nowadays.
Yours doesn't have this. But really, like, they were both great systems. But you just sort of like sided with whichever one you had. Whatever your parents bought for you, you had to love it. But you still had fun going over to your buddy's house and playing the other system and seeing the cool stuff that they had. And it, it
absolutely.
was also, they were both great systems.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, what's there to complain about? I mean, I think a lot of people stuck with Nintendo because the NES came out, and they were like,
"Well, was solid.
All we know is Nintendo." You know what I mean? Some people, I understand people don't like going to new things and trying new things out, but I love Nintendo. But I jumped onto the Sega Genesis because I saw it and I had played it. And that was before they didn't even really do demoing in stores, like where you couldn't go to like a Best Buy or something and pick up. They would have it behind like a glass case, and you'd be like, "Oh, I guess I have to pick. I guess I have to guess and pick which one I want." But like you said, if your friend had it, you were so happy to play the other system, because it was something that you never had to play. Yeah, that's factual.
Or like your parents would hear about it on the news that this device is selling and you should get one for your kids.
Yep.
And that was about it. But there wasn't.
No
one had any other way to learn about it other than like maybe seeing it on the news or actually playing it at your buddy's house.